So I'll begin to read right here from my own personal notes here that I have taken. I am really stunned to find out that there was a considerable effort, and because of the asteroids and meteorite situation, they have committed a pretty substantial amount of resources in trying to mathematically calculate percentages and probabilities and stuff like that of strikes, where the strikes would take place, and those types of things. And I guess their thinking, which is understandable, is that, if it happened before, I think you get like the pathing information, where the paths of things are coming from, and the probability is that all the next strike will probably follow some sort of path that a past strike has followed. That's kind of their thinking. When we begin to have this discussion, and I'm listening to this, and I'm listening to the Pentagon is trying to calculate the path of something, and that they feel like that once they know the path, they have an idea of what's going to happen again. I realize we're not talking about some asteroid coming in and striking the Earth. I realized we were getting into something quite a bit different from the very outset of our meeting. And he went on to say, it's pretty interesting report, talking about the report that the Pentagon has put out within itself amongst those that have that particular level of clearance. The more interesting part of it was not only the giant situation. I got to pause just for a moment, right? We're talking already about pathing of some kind of celestial object. We're talking about that a substantial amount of resources had already been spent on the mathematical calculations of incoming asteroids and comets, or not comets, but meteorites. And then I'm being told that they're examining this pathing information because if they can realize what happened, however long ago it may have been, that they have a good chance of knowing what's going to happen in the future. And then we start off in the next comment. It says, it's pretty interesting report. Its more interesting part of it was not only the giant situation, but that I would call super giants. Now we're talking about giants. So that lets me know that the time frame of the report and the research that's being done is back during the times of when we had giants on the earth. Now, which giants was that? The giants that we see after the antediluvian destruction, in other words, before the Great Flood? Or is it the giants before the flood? Now, quite frankly, I always thought the giants before and after were about the same size, even though I knew that Enoch recorded that those giants were like 30 cubits or something like that. I mean, really a height that would exceed anything imaginable for us. I thought it was a typographical error, quite frankly. I really did. We're talking about well over 1,000, maybe 2,000, 3,000 feet tall, if I understand right. And that seems like totally impossible. Whereas the giants after the flood, 9 foot to 20 foot, right? So let's just keep this in mind. So I realize, though, we're going back thousands of years ago. And so I realize, it comes to my mind, this must be about Planet X. Follow along with me here. So he goes to say to me, it was not only about the giant situation, but that I would call it super giants, where they were stating, maybe that word is started, they have proof that leads them to believe that there were at one point these super giants. Did you just hear that? The Pentagon scientists believe that at one point there were these supergiants. They don't base that on just anything. They claim that they reached heights of 1,000 to 2,000 feet tall. And they're not just delegating this to the Native American folklore, which Native Americans apparently had folklore that said the giants were so tall that their heads were literally in the clouds. They kind of led you to believe that the giants that were referenced in the Bible really were only about 15 to 20 feet tall. They were giants, but they weren't super giants as recorded in Enoch. The biblical giants were a more palatable size. It wasn't like a giant that was so tall his head reached the clouds, and now they have identified quite a few terrestrial objects that the scientists claim are leftovers or basically deceased body parts of these giants that are actually mountains. Yeah. Now I realize what I'm sharing with you now is going to sound almost like a fairy tale. And listen, take it or leave it. I'm not asking you to believe one way or the other when it comes to that. And I don't say necessarily what my personal view is, but I'm asked on situations like this, and in particular because of this very statement here, I was asked in all the research that I have ever done in the ancient documents, have I ever run across a document that would support that giants were like mountains or had become mountains later, like a tree that becomes petrified wood out in the desert. And I don't really know the process, how that works, but over time the piece of wood becomes like a stone. Well, oddly enough, the answer was yes. I was very much aware that there was a passage in the Dead Sea Scrolls that spoke of giants like that of a mountain. I'll read it for you. It's in the Damascus document 4Q265. In fact, let me just share it with you on the screen here so you can see it for yourself. This is just the English version of it. Hear now, my sons, and I will uncover your eyes that you may see and understand the works of God, that you may choose that which pleases him and reject that which he hates, that you walk perfectly in his ways, not follow after the thoughts of the guilty, inclination after eyes of lust. For through them great men have gone astray, mighty heroes have stumbled from the former times till now. Because they walked in the stubbornness of their heart, the heavenly watchers fail. They were caught because they did not keep the commandments of God. Their sons also fell, who were tall as cedar trees, and whose bodies were like mountains. All flesh on dry land perished. When their bodies hit the ground, they were like mountains. And oddly enough, there's other places as well that may allude to that similar thought in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And there were other writings in the Egyptian writings that I've read that I've also wondered if it could not possibly allude to that. But this, by the way, friends, is not where we're going when it comes to this Planet X. So definitely don't stop the video. It's fixing to get very interesting. They also are persuaded, as I continue in this meeting notes, in their reports, that if we were able to excavate into these mountains, they would find gold in large deposits, because they feel that over a significant amount of time, the blood commonly would turn to gold. And so like at Devil's Mountain in Wyoming, at the base of this location, there would probably yield billions and billions of dollars worth of gold. Yet you can't excavate it because it's considered a national park or a national monument. Well, you know, most people, when they think of Devil's Mountain, and let me just share that with you there in Wyoming there, the national monument, maybe many of you are aware of it. And I forget what they told me. I want to say they said that this was something like that of a hip or something like that is what they believed. This is not the actual one that they're doing the excavation of. If I can ever get the right image, let me just go to images here. Here we go. Oh, still got a bad one there. How do I end up with the same junk? And I keep going into the same stuff over and over and over and over. Anyway, you can see it right there, though, for yourself there. I don't remember if this was part of the, considered to be part of a leg bone, and I know that sounds completely bizarre, right? Completely bizarre. But I do know that, and I can't divulge everything that was discussed with me in this particular meeting, but there have been other locations that the scientists from our government have discovered mountains that have attributes, DNA evidence of human remains that we might say are petrified. This is why I was being asked for ancient documents that might back up this. Was it really true? Not only did we have giants that were the size of mountains, but what were other evidences that I might be aware of? But as I said, there's a reason behind this. All right, there is a very serious reason. So let's continue on. So as I said there, they claimed that if they could excavate this mountain, they believe they'd find a lot of gold because of the blood. And that, like I said, sounds preposterous. But for me, it did not sound preposterous. And I'll tell you why. Not that blood just turns into gold over, say, thousands of years. I really don't know the answer to that. But what did come to my mind, though, was from Exodus chapter 32, verse 20. And this is where we read about Moses taking, and it says, and he took the calf which they had made, and we know the calf, by the way, was made out of gold. And he burnt it in the fire and ground it to powder and strawed it upon the water and made the children of Israel drink of it. Now, why would Moses do that? I don't really know the answer for it. To destroy the idol is one thing, but to grind it to powder and then put it in the water and make them drink, that's like monoatomic gold. Now, I'm not encouraging anybody to get monoatomic gold by no means, but I do know, I've heard enough about real monoatomic gold that has longevity of life if you take it. In fact, we know that after the children of Israel drank from this water, washed their clothes in it and everything else, their bodies did not age for 40 years. Their clothes and their shoes did not wear out. Was it that gold in there that did that? And of course, them ingesting the gold, that would end up becoming part of their blood. So is that possible that scripture there might incline us to believe that perhaps there could be some truth to this blood issue, and being that there would be a lot of gold under this mountain? I don't know the answer to that. As I said, I don't even know if I could believe it personally. It doesn't really matter to me if I believe it or not. It's just interesting. Let's continue on. Continuing in my notes here. The other thing that was kind of interesting, actually I found very interesting. You remember back before 2012, there's this whole hoopla made about the Mayans. Said that in 2012 it's going to be the end of humanity or civilization or something to that effect. Well, from 2005 to 2010, the U.S. government spent billions of dollars in researching the Mayan prophecy. However, the information that was made public was much different than the information in top secret reports. That's what I was telling you about. The government researchers believe that there was some sort of Planet X. Here we go, friends. Put on your seatbelt. And that when it passed, there was some sort of war between the inhabitants of Planet X and Earthlings. And the war was not necessarily like the traditional war that we think of, but it was a spiritual war. Did you just hear what I just said? a spiritual war.